Admiral Venterix of the Meridian Alliance watched the holographic display with mounting despair as another defense platform around Nexus Station crumbled under the Vorax swarm's relentless assault. The massive space station, home to the Alliance Council and symbolic heart of galactic civilization, had withstood 17 days of continuous attack. But even its legendary defenses couldn't hold forever against the biological horrors that had already devoured 12 worlds. Status report, Terix demanded, his crystalline form glowing a deep purple of concern. Third quadrant shields at 12%. Admiral, his second-in-command, Commander Ilara, reported. Her bioluminescent tendrils pulsed with anxiety. The modified phage barriers are slowing their smaller units, but the alpha-strain Leviathans are adapting faster than our predictive models anticipated. Terix had seen too many worlds fall to the Vorax pattern. First came the swarmlings, countless millions of house-sized organisms that overwhelmed conventional defenses through sheer numbers. Then the Leviathans would arrive, mountain-sized living weapons that could shrug off capital ship bombardment while they dismantled planets piece by piece. The Vorax didn't seek conquest or resources. They consumed everything in their path, breaking down all matter and energy to fuel their endless expansion. Sir, Ilara's voice cracked. Long-range sensors detect 3 more Leviathans emerging from fold space. They're larger than any we've encountered. The Admiral's crystalline structure dimmed. They had already lost half the defense fleet, and reinforcements from the outer sectors wouldn't arrive for another 2 days. Nexus Station would be gone by then, along with the 5 billion souls aboard it. Prepare to execute Protocol Omega, Terix ordered quietly. The command deck fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Detonating the station's antimatter cores would vaporize everything within half a light minute. Better a quick death than being consumed by the swarm. That's when the impossible happened. Multiple fold space ruptures detected. The sensor officer shouted, "Unknown configurations. Energy signatures aren't matching any known species." The void between Nexus Station and the approaching Leviathans erupted with light as hundreds of ships tore into reality. They were unlike anything Terix had ever seen. Brutal, utilitarian designs bristling with what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons. No aesthetic consideration, no attempt at the elegant lines preferred by civilized species. They looked like they had been built for one purpose only: war. "We're receiving a transmission," Ilara reported, broadcasting on all frequencies, multiple formats. It's using basic particle physics equations as a translation key. A voice filled the command deck, speaking in careful, measured tones. "This is Admiral Helena Zhang of the United Earth Defense Force. We detected your distress signal and have come to render assistance. Be advised that we will be employing kinetic and nuclear ordnance. Recommend all Allied forces maintain minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers from engagement zones." Before Terix could respond, the human ships accelerated at speeds that should have liquefied any organic crew. They split into perfect attack formations, but ones that made no tactical sense according to any known doctrine. The smallest human vessels, barely the size of corvettes, charged directly at the Leviathans. "Sir," the weapons officer's voice was filled with disbelief. They're using mass drivers, physical projectiles, and nuclear weapons." Terix watched in stunned amazement as the first salvo of human weapons fire crossed space. Raw kinetic energy, he realized. Simple projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. The Vorax's energy-dispersing biological armor, evolved to counter energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper. The first Leviathan's head exploded in a spray of ichor and chitin. The humans fought like nothing Terix had ever seen. Their ships took horrible damage but refused to die. Compartments sealed off while crews continued fighting from whatever systems still functioned. They employed electronic warfare that somehow predicted and countered the swarm's biological coordination. And most incredibly, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Their command channels were filled with chatter, jokes, and something called Wagner. "Sir," Ilara's voice was quiet with awe. "I've accessed their public database. These humans, they're from a death world. Their entire history is warfare. They split the atom centuries ago, and their first thought was to make it into a weapon. They'd fought so many wars against themselves that they've mastered every form of combat imaginable. And now they're here." Terex finished, watching as another Leviathan died under concentrated human fire. "Send a priority message to the Alliance Council. Tell them that everything has changed. The galaxy just got much more interesting and much more dangerous." The battle for Nexus Station would be remembered as humanity's dramatic entrance onto the galactic stage. But for Admiral Terex, watching those crude warships tear apart humanity's greatest nightmare, it was something else. A reminder that the universe still held surprises. Sometimes, salvation came not from advanced technology or sophisticated strategies, but from a species that had turned war itself into an art form. One thing was certain: the Vorax swarm was about to learn a harsh lesson about their place in the food chain. Humanity had arrived, and they had brought with them humanity's greatest invention: the science of violence, refined over millennia of conflict into something approaching perfection. The Meridian Alliance's Strategic Command Center buzzed with an energy commander Ilara hadn't felt since before the Vorax emerged from deep space. 3 weeks had passed since humanity's intervention at Nexus Station, and the massive holographic display showed something previously unthinkable: Vorax forces in retreat across multiple sectors. "I still don't understand," Counselor Zaruk complained, his crystalline form flickering with frustrated colors. "The humans' technology is primitive compared to ours. Their ships lack quantum shields, their weapons are based on simple kinetic principles, and they rely on biological neural networks instead of proper quantum computing. How are they achieving these results?" Admiral Zhang smiled from her position at the briefing table. The human commander looked deceptively fragile next to the towering crystalline forms of the Alliance leadership, but her presence dominated the room. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective, Counselor. Your civilizations developed energy weapons and shields to counter them. The Vorax evolved biological countermeasures to those same principles. But none of you ever seriously considered throwing very heavy rocks very fast. Relativistic hill vehicles," Admiral Terex mused, his crystalline structure pulsing with curiosity. "Your species weaponized basic physics." "Exactly," Zhang nodded. "The Vorax evolved to counter energy weapons, but they never needed to develop defenses against kinetic impacts. Why would they? No advanced species would consider such primitive methods. But humanity," she grinned, "we never met a rock we didn't think about throwing at someone." The tactical display shifted, showing footage from the latest engagement. Human ships performed maneuvers that seemed to defy physics, their crews somehow surviving accelerations that should have been lethal. Their formations appeared chaotic until the moment they revealed themselves as perfect killing positions. "But it's more than just our weapons," John continued. "Humanity brings something unique to this fight: unpredictability. We've spent our entire history fighting ourselves, developing countless strategies and counter-strategies. The Vorax operate on pure biological imperatives: expand, consume, adapt. They can't adapt to what they can't predict." The display showed a new tactical overlay: human ships deliberately creating gaps in their formations, baiting Vorax swarmlings into kill zones. Other vessels launched what appeared to be modified mining drones, which burrowed into the larger Vorax organisms and detonated nuclear charges from within. "Your species is remarkable," Ilara observed, her bioluminescence pulsing with fascination. "You've turned your greatest weakness, your divisive nature and constant warfare, into your greatest strength." Zhang's expression turned somber. "We learned our lessons the hard way, Commander. Humanity spent millennia trying to kill itself in increasingly creative ways. When we finally reached the stars, we promised ourselves that we use that knowledge to protect others instead. The Vorax may be the perfect predator, but humanity. She gestured to the display, showing another successful engagement. We're the perfect survivors. The briefing continued as Zhang outlined humanity's proposed strategies for pushing back the swarm. They would teach Alliance crews their tactics, upgrade their ships with hybrid technology, combining advanced Alliance systems with crude but effective human weapons. But most importantly, they would instill something the Alliance had begun to lose in the face of the Vorax threat: hope. Later, in a private moment, Tyrix found Zhang staring at the tactical display, studying the Vorax deployment patterns. "There's something you're not telling the Council," he said. It wasn't a question. Zhang nodded slowly. "We've analyzed the Vorax biological patterns. They're not natural evolution. They're engineered. Someone created them, Admiral. And if our analysis is correct, they're not just a weapon. They're a test. A test. For what? To find species worthy of survival." Zhang's eyes never left the display. Think about it. The Vorax adapt to everything they encounter, but they do so predictably. They're designed to force civilizations to innovate or die. The Alliance was losing because you tried to counter them with increasingly sophisticated versions of the same basic technologies. Humanity succeeded because we approached the problem from a completely different angle. Tyrix's crystalline structure dimmed as the implications sank in. "You think there's something worse coming. There's always something worse coming, Admiral. That's another lesson humanity learned the hard way. The question isn't whether we can stop it. The question is whether we can adapt faster than it can." She finally turned to face him. "The Alliance has the technology. Humanity has the mindset. Together, we might just have a chance." As if to punctuate her words, the tactical display updated with another victory. Another Vorax fleet broken, another sector liberated. But in the depths of space, something was stirring. The Vorax were changing their patterns, attempting to adapt to humanity's presence. The real test was just beginning, and its outcome would determine the fate of all sentient life in the galaxy. The war wasn't over. It was evolving. And humanity was ready to teach the galaxy how to evolve with it. The bridge of the UES Thermopylae shuddered as another volley of bioplasma washed over its reinforced hull. Captain Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with growing concern as the largest Vorax force ever encountered continued its relentless advance toward the Arcturus defense line. Hull integrity at 62%, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his hands dancing across the damage control interface. "Kinetic barriers holding, but the new strain of swarmlings is adapting to our point defense patterns." Chen nodded grimly. The Vorax had indeed been learning, evolving new countermeasures to humanity's tactics with frightening speed. But that's exactly what she had been counting on. Status of Operation Tripwire. Biosignatures confirmed. Captain, her science officer, Dr. Patel, reported with barely contained excitement. The Vorax are incorporating the modified genetic markers exactly as predicted. 87% of the swarm now carries the sequence. The massive view screen showed the brutally elegant dance of battle. Human ships, now integrated with Alliance technology, moved in seemingly random patterns that resolved into deadly geometric shapes. The Vorax responded with their own evolving strategies, their biological ships sprouting new weapons and defenses mid-battle. "Send the signal to Alliance Command," Chen ordered. "Execute Phase 2. Across the battlefield, hundreds of human and Alliance ships began a fighting retreat. To the Vorax, it must have looked like their superior numbers had finally broken the defenders' line. Their swarms pressed forward eagerly, biological weapons systems adapting and evolving with each engagement. "They're pursuing exactly as predicted," Rodriguez announced. "Leading elements are approaching the gravity well of AS-249. Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Initiate Project Prometheus." Deep within the supposedly unremarkable brown dwarf star designated as 249, carefully hidden human engineering came to life. Quantum beacons activated, their signals triggering a cascade of precisely calculated stellar reactions. The star's core, artificially destabilized over weeks of careful preparation, began to collapse. Stellar collapse proceeding according to models, Dr. Paddle reported, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Magnetic containment fields are shaping the reaction exactly as designed. The Vorax ships, their biological systems already compromised by carefully engineered weaknesses in human defensive patterns, never saw the trap until it was too late. As 249 erupted not in a simple explosion, but in a precisely shaped stellar lance that carved through space like a scalpel through flesh. Direct hit on primary Vorax concentrations, Rodriguez called out. Their biological armor is. It's not just failing, it's breaking down at the molecular level. The modified genetic markers are triggering cascade failures across their entire neural network. The tactical display told the story. The combination of precisely engineered radiation from the stellar explosion and the biological vulnerability humanity had spent weeks secretly introducing into the Vorax swarm created a devastating synergy. Ships that should have adapted instead began to dissolve. Their very genetic structure turned against them. "Send word to Admiral Zhang," Chen ordered. "Operation Prometheus is a success. The Vorax's adaptive capabilities have become their greatest weakness." As her crew celebrated, Chen studied the tactical display with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. They had just demonstrated that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its ships or its guns. It was its ability to think laterally, to turn an enemy's strength into a fatal flaw. But her conversation with a captured Vorax bioform last week still haunted her. "You do not understand," the creature had said, its translated thoughts carrying an emotion suspiciously like satisfaction. "We are not the test. We are the preparation." Later, in her private quarters, Chen reviewed the after-action reports while composing her log entry. "To date, we proved that even the perfect biological weapon can be defeated by human ingenuity. We turned the Vorax's ability to adapt against them, used their own evolution as a vector for their destruction. But I can't shake the feeling that we're still missing something crucial. The Vorax aren't just a weapon. They're a filter, selecting for species capable of thinking beyond conventional solutions. The question is, what comes after the filter?" The victory at Arcturus would be remembered as the turning point in the war against the Vorax. Humanity had proven that even the most sophisticated biological weapons could be defeated by sufficiently creative thinking. But in the darkness between the stars, something was stirring. The true architects of the Vorax watched with growing interest as humanity demonstrated exactly the kind of innovative problem-solving they had been seeking to cultivate. The test was nearly complete. Soon, it would be time for the next phase to begin. The quarantine labs aboard Nexus Station hummed with activity as Dr. Elena Santos studied the latest test results. The captured Vorax specimens floated in their containment tanks, their biological structures undergoing rapid changes as they responded to her team's latest viral cocktail. Behind her, the observation deck was crowded with both human and Alliance observers, all watching with a mixture of fascination and horror. "The ethical implications are concerning," Counselor Zaruk stated, his crystalline form flickering with unease. "Using biological warfare, even against the Vorax." "With respect, Counselor," Admiral Zhang interrupted, "the Vorax are biological warfare. We're simply speaking to them in their own language." Dr. Santos turned from her displays, her eyes bright with the fever of discovery. The Vorax's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and evolve, is also their greatest vulnerability. They're designed to absorb and incorporate useful genetic traits from species they encounter. We're using that against them. The main display showed microscopic views of Vorax cellular structures being invaded by engineered viruses, but instead of destroying the cells, the viruses were rewriting them, introducing new genetic instructions that spread through the Vorax's collective biological network like a cascade of falling dominoes. "Think of it as reprogramming," Santos continued. "The Vorax operate on a vast biological network, sharing genetic information across their entire swarm. We're not trying to kill them. We're trying to change what they are." And what exactly are you changing them into? Commander Ilara asked, her bioluminescent patterns showing both curiosity and concern. Santos smiled, something that doesn't want to eat everything it encounters. The Vorax were engineered to be perfect predators, but what if we could make them perfect symbionts instead? The display shifted to show successful test cases, modified Vorax specimens that had developed protective rather than predatory relationships with other organisms. Their formerly aggressive bioweapons had been transformed into defensive structures, their consumption mechanisms rewired for mutual benefit rather than pure destruction. It's already working on a small scale, Zhang noted, gesturing to the test specimens. The question is, can we deploy it across their entire swarm? That's where the human factor comes in, Santos replied. She brought up a new tactical display showing modified human ships equipped with biological delivery systems. We've designed specialized viral payload ships that can penetrate Vorax formations using the same tactics that worked so well with our kinetic weapons. Once inside their defensive perimeter, we release the virus. Their own biological network does the rest. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just fighting the Vorax anymore. They were attempting to fundamentally change them. It was exactly the kind of audacious, potentially catastrophic plan that only humans would conceive. There's something else, Santos added quietly. While studying their genetic structure, we found something interesting. The Vorax aren't just engineered, they're signed. Whoever created them left a message in their DNA, but it's not complete. It's like they're waiting for someone to be clever enough to find it and decode it. Admiral Zhang's expression hardened. Have you decoded it? Partially. It's an invitation. Or a warning. Maybe both. Santos brought up a complex sequence of genetic markers on the main display. Translated roughly, it says, "To those who solve this puzzle, prepare for ascension." The implications hung heavy in the air. The Vorax weren't just a weapon or a test. They were a message written in the language of DNA, a cosmic filter seeking species capable of not just surviving them, but understanding and changing them. Launch the operation, Zhang ordered after a long moment. If we're right about this, changing the Vorax isn't just about winning the war. It's about proving we're ready for whatever comes next. As the meeting dispersed, Santos returned to her specimens, watching as they continued their transformation from destroyers to creators. In their cellular dance, she saw the future of the galaxy being rewritten, one genetic sequence at a time. Humanity had come to the stars ready for war, but they had found something far more interesting, a puzzle written in the language of life itself. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the architects of this grand experiment watched with growing satisfaction as humanity proved itself worthy of the next phase. The test was almost complete. Soon, it would be time for true first contact. The Great Hall of Nexus Station had never been so quiet. Representatives from every Alliance species stood frozen as the holographic message played again, its source unlike anything they had ever encountered. The being that addressed them defied easy description, a shifting matrix of light and energy that somehow conveyed both age and intelligence beyond comprehension. We are the precursors, the entity's thoughts translated directly into their minds. And you have passed the first trial. Admiral Zhang stood at the forefront of the assembled leaders, her expression carefully neutral as she studied the ancient being. Beside her, Dr. Santos continued analyzing the readings from the transformed Vorax ships that now orbited peacefully around the station, their biological structures completely rewritten by humanity's viral solution. The Vorax were our creation. The precursor continued, a test we have seeded throughout countless galaxies. Many species survive them. Some even defeat them. But you are the first to understand them, to change them without destroying them, to turn a weapon into a tool for creation. You risked countless lives, Zhang responded, her voice tight with controlled anger. Entire civilizations have been destroyed by your test. The precursor's form rippled in what might have been acknowledgement. Evolution requires pressure. Growth demands challenge. We sought species capable of true innovation, not merely technological advancement, but fundamental shifts in thinking. The Vorax were designed to force exactly that kind of evolution. Commander Ilara stepped forward, her bioluminescence pulsing with a complex mix of emotions. The genetic message we found: prepare for ascension. What does it mean? It means the precursor's form expanded, filling the hall with shifting patterns of light, that you are ready to learn what lies beyond. The Vorax were not merely a test. They were a key. By understanding and transforming them, you have proven yourselves capable of comprehending what we have to show you. The air itself seemed to vibrate as the ancient being projected a series of images into their minds. They saw galaxies being born, civilizations rising and falling across eons, and something more, glimpses of a reality far vaster and stranger than they had imagined. The universe, the precursor explained, is merely the surface of a far deeper reality. We have waited eons for species capable of helping us maintain it. Species that can face the impossible and find not just solutions, but transformations. Dr. Santos' eyes widened as she connected the dots. The Vorax's adaptive abilities. They weren't just for fighting. They were a model of how reality itself works, weren't they? You wanted to find species that could understand change at its most fundamental level. Precisely. The precursor's form contracted into a tight spiral of light. Reality itself is under siege from forces you cannot yet comprehend. We need allies who can think beyond the boundaries of conventional physics and biology. The Vorax were a microcosm of the true challenge that faces all sentient life. Admiral Zhang stepped forward. And what makes you think we'll help you, after what you've done? Because, the ancient being responded, you have already proven that your first instinct is to transform rather than destroy, to understand rather than fear. The galaxy believes you are warriors, but we see what you truly are, pioneers of possibility. The hall erupted in discussion as the implications sank in. Humanity's arrival on the galactic stage hadn't just changed the balance of power, it had triggered the next phase of cosmic evolution. The Vorax hadn't been a mere invasion, they had been a door. And humanity had found the key not in their weapons, but in their ability to imagine solutions beyond mere victory or defeat. Later, as the Alliance Council debated their response to the precursor's revelation, Zhang found herself in the observation deck, watching the transformed Vorax ships moving in their new peaceful patterns. We thought we were fighting for survival, she mused to Dr. Santos, who stood beside her. Instead, we were proving we could do more than just survive. Santos nodded. The real question is, are we ready for what comes next? The precursors showed us glimpses of threats that make the Vorax look like a practice run. Maybe that's exactly why they chose this method of testing us, Zhang replied. They needed to know we could face the impossible without losing our humanity, our ability to see beyond simple destruction to the possibility of transformation. As if in response, the transformed Vorax ships began to glow with a new kind of energy, their biological structures resonating with patterns similar to the precursor's manifestation. They had become more than just reformed weapons. They were now bridges to understanding the deeper nature of reality itself. The war was over, but the true journey was just beginning. Humanity had come to the stars ready for battle, only to find themselves pioneers of a much greater adventure. The price of victory hadn't been measured in ships or lives lost, but in their willingness to transcend the very notion of victory itself. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient eyes watched with satisfaction as their newest allies took their first steps toward a destiny even the precursors couldn't fully predict. The age of testing was over. The age of transformation had begun.